Good morning, third graders. Welcome to a brand new social studies lesson. This week we're going to read lesson 3, rural communities, and we're going to learn how we can identify rural communities and define features of rural communities. Now, before we go ahead, please do not forget to pause this video for better understanding. So let's get started. Here we can see that this is the first page of this lesson. Here is the heading, the main heading, rural communities. And below this, we're going to find a lot of paragraphs and lots of subtitles underneath this heading. Right here is your vocabulary. We're going to review this as we read the lesson. And let's focus on this picture first. Here is the caption, and here is your picture. You can see a massive field of crops, and that's a farmer working right here in this corner of the page. Let's read the caption. Many crops are grown near SST, Arkansas. Great, so first we need to see where Arkansas is. So let's have a look at part of this United States map. And here, defined by these red borders, is the state of Arkansas. And if you look closer, we can see that right here is Little Rock, the capital city of the state. Please again, look at the borders that define the state. And that's the capital city. And right here at a considerable distance is SST, the rural community we're going to be reading about today. So let's begin reading. The opening paragraph talks about how many people live in urban and suburban communities in the United States, and other people live in small towns that are far away from these areas. So our focus is these far away smaller towns called rural communities. So let's read about SST here. So first of all, we need to be able to define what are rural regions. So let's read through this paragraph. A rural region is in the countryside, away from cities and large towns. Small towns, farms, fields, and woods make up rural regions. SST is a rural community in Arkansas. Great. And on this page, we're going to look at how life is for people who live in rural communities. So let's look at this girl. Her name is Mallory. Mallory lives in SST, a rural community. Let's read about Mallory and her life in the small town. So the heading is Small Town Life. Mallory lives in a small house in SST. Her father works at a store in the town. Her mother works at community newspaper. The newspaper provides important local information to the citizens of SST. Mallory attends one of the elementary schools in SST, enjoys playing soccer with her friends at a nearby soccer field, and she also spends time at the community center where people play basketball, tennis, and other sports. In the fall, Mallory visits the county fair. She enjoys looking at the many animals that are brought to the fair from the surrounding countryside. She also enjoys the rides and games at the carnival. So that's her life in the community. And county fairs are usually held annually in counties, and they exhibit local agriculture, which means crops and livestock, animals. You can see in this picture here the white county fair in SST where kids are playing these little tiny ponies. So it's a display of agriculture products, including livestock in rural communities. And this word right here, carnival, refers to these rides. So usually with these county fairs, they attract people by organizing carnivals. Great. So now let's look at urban and suburban connections. Now let's have a closer view and let's read aloud. You can always pause this page, remember, and you can read through the sentences over and over again. Sometimes you need to read more than once in order to absorb information. So please do not hesitate to do that. Great, let's start reading. Urban and suburban connections. Rural, urban, and suburban communities may all be different, but they're important to each other. Colleges in each kind of area provide education for students from the other areas. So Remember that in many rural communities, there are colleges that help provide education. Many rural areas grow and produce food for other communities. So rural areas are very important because other communities, that's urban, suburban, or the nearby suburbs, depend on the crops and food that is produced by these rural communities. And in turn, rural communities depend on the colleges that might be present in the urban and suburban community to provide education for the students. Now, people in rural areas sometimes travel long distances to visit cities, and some cities have more choices in stores and more choices of doctors to visit. As we saw on the map, that Cersei was pretty far away from the suburbs and the main downtown city of Little Rock. So you can think about the long travel distances to visit these other cities in order to have more choices in stores and hospitals that people might want to visit. Now here we're going to look at Sherwood and Little Rock. Sherwood is a suburb that's close by to Little Rock in Arkansas. Little Rock, Arkansas is the large city nearest to Cersei. It is located around 50 miles from the town. Little Rock is an urban community in the center of the state's government. A few miles south is Sherwood, a suburb of Little Rock. Many people in Sherwood work in Little Rock, so here's where your connection is. People living in the suburb working in Little Rock, and we've read about this in our previous lesson. People in Cersei, which is a rural area, sometimes drive to Little Rock to visit hospitals or shop at stores. So these are the connections between urban, suburban, and rural communities. Let's have a closer view on this map. You can see that that's Cersei up over there, pretty far away from Little Rock, right? And that's Little Rock. And right here on the outskirts of Little Rock is Sherwood, as you can see. So you can imagine that people in the rural communities have to travel all the way to Sherwood or sometimes to Little Rock to visit shopping malls and hospitals. All right, so on this page, we're going to read about other rural communities. Many people in Cersei work in agriculture. So here is where we're going to look at the definition of the word agriculture. Agriculture is the raising of farm animals and the growing of crops for sale. Not all rural communities are farm and ranches. Now you should remember that many other communities depend on rural communities for the agricultural products, food supplies, crops, farm animals, that's livestock. Great, but not all rural communities are farms. Or not all rural communities rely on agriculture as their economy. Let's read about a rural community that does not rely on agriculture. So a college town. Stillwater is a town in Oklahoma. The economy of Stillwater is based on the university there. An economy is the way a community or country makes and uses goods and services, which in simpler words just means that how do people make money in this community? How do they generate revenue? What do they do in order to produce services and goods and get money in return? What do they do? So let's read about Stillwater. Many people who live in Stillwater work or take classes at Oklahoma State University. Their university is important to Stillwater. When the school grows, so does the town. Students who go to the university live in Stillwater's apartments and houses. Students also eat at restaurants in Stillwater. The town's business hires students. In order to have a better understanding, let me show you a map here. So that's Oklahoma State. Notice the border here. And let's have a closer view. So if the state university is here, right there around these red borders is your rural community of Stillwater. So students are studying at the state university here. They're going to live somewhere here in this rural community, which is pretty close by, right? Not too far away. And they're also going to dine, eat right here. So people who live here, right, are going to make money again. Are going to make money by giving out their properties, apartments, houses for rent to these students and catering them at the diners where these students eat. So that's how towns business hires students and creates jobs and revenue, and that's what boosts the economy of this rural community. So you can see that not all rural communities have agricultural farms and livestock that they depend on, right? And this right here is an example of a rural community that relies on other ways of making money. And this, again, is from your book, Children in History. This is about Maya Angelou. She is a very famous writer who lived in a rural community in Arkansas in the 1930s. And Angelou helped at a store her grandmother owned in the rural community in Arkansas. She later wrote memories in a book about her life. She wrote customers could find food staples, means common foods, good variety of colored thread, corn for chickens, coal oil for lamps, light bulbs for the wealthy, shoestrings, hairdressing, balloons, and flower seeds. So I'd definitely like to mention Maya Angelou. She's a very famous African-American writer, that too a female in that era. That was something very special, and it still is, because this lady made history. She's an author, she's an actress, she's a screenwriter, a dancer, a poet, and a civil rights activist for African Americans and for African American women, right? This is one of her very famous memoirs, an autobiography that she wrote that consists of 7 parts, and it was called I Know Why the Caged Birds Sang. So she definitely needed a tribute here in this lesson. Now let's look at what else can the rural communities cater in order to generate money and withhold their economy. So here we're going to look at a very special rural community, my favorite one actually. So let's read. Outdoor activities in historic towns. Rural areas offer outdoor activities such as fishing, skiing, and hiking. Some towns have historic sites. Here we're going to look at Michigan's Mcnall Island that offers both, right? So in winters, this place offers skiing, and in summers it offers hiking and fishing trips, and it's a gorgeous place, and people go there for family vacations. So visitors, let's read again, visitors fish and go boating on Lake Michigan. They explore history at Fort Mcnall. This site has the oldest buildings in Michigan. This island was invaded multiple times, first by the French and then later. There's a lot of history behind it. I can share a few links if you're interested, and we're going to discuss about it in our e-discussions. And now here's a fun fact. In the 1920s, Mcnall Island no longer allowed automobiles in the island. So the only way that is found for transportation, mode of transportation, is horses, bikes, buggies, carriages, and it's just beautiful, very basic. I'll share a link with you where you can basically explore this island furthermore. Now, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to answer this. How can rural communities be different from each other? So again, remember outdoor activities and the way they they build their economy. Some of them build it around agricultural products. The other type we saw was the Stillwater rural community that depended on the state university, college town. And here in this example of Mcnall, we have a rural community basically depends on tourism, outdoor activities, right? Perfect. So what's today's task? Well, you're going to solve page number 16 and 17 in the practice book, and I will guide you through this right now. So these are the pages from your practice book. Let's read what are the instructions. So here you're going to circle the picture of the correct feature that you might find in a rural community, and then you're going to answer questions that follow these pictures. So let's have a look at this first question, and these are the pictures that are related. So close the view, subway, farm. Definitely can't find the subway in rural community, so we're going to circle farm. You find farms in the rural communities. How do other communities depend on the features circled above? So well, the answer is very easy. Rural communities provide agricultural needs, livestock needs, fishing needs. In many circumstances, there are fish farms in rural communities. So you can basically write this answer, and you can shorten it up by just writing these blue highlighted words and phrases here. And if you're looking for explanation, I've explained what do we mean by agriculture needs, livestock needs here for you. You can go through it. Now let's look at the next pictures, and we can see that there's a college here and a skyscraper. Now in a rural community, I ain't finding a skyscraper, so the correct choice is college. I might just find a college nearby. Think about Stillwater, where there were many people, many students attending and working at Oklahoma State University. That's how the community made money. So how does the feature circled above helps in rural economies? The answer is, if there are colleges, there will be jobs. And if there are jobs, there will be opportunities for students, learning opportunities, and this is going to help rural community build businesses. You can expand this answer, you can edit it in your own words, you can talk about the diners where the students might eat, or the apartments or houses that the students might need for rent to live in, and that's how people are going to make money. So you always have the choice to edit these answers here in your own words. Great, let's look at the next page. This is page 17. And here we've got two pictures again. Will I find a city shopping area in a rural community? Definitely not. Outdoor activities, yes, that's right. Think about the Mcnall Island in Michigan that we just visited a few minutes ago. So I'm going to circle outdoor activities. Now, how can people from urban and suburban areas enjoy the feature circled above? The answer is simple. Think about tourism. Think about families going on vacations, enjoying activities like hiking. You can see someone hiking right there. Camping, fishing, water sports, swimming, etc. So tourism, that family vacations that can help build this community's economy. Great. So today, I want you to complete the assignment on page 16 and 17. And then when you're done, take a virtual trip to Mcnall by clicking on this link. I'll post this in the discussion. And do not forget to submit your comments in the discussion. I'd love to hear, what did you learn about rural communities? What part was your favorite? And maybe you want to write down your own experiences while you might have traveled to a country and visited a rural community that you loved. So please do not forget to comment in the discussions. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. Best of luck, grade 3.